On Wednesday, the World Smart City Expo will kick off here in South Korea. This is its 7th edition, and it will focus on the theme Smarter City, Brighter Future. It will feature a range of technologies for safe and livable cities and includes notable elements like the WSCE Mayors Forum, Hydrogen City Pavilion, and others. There will also be conferences in various fields such as government-to-government cooperation meetings with the Netherlands, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and others, as well as conferences on data, finance, and governance, along with one-on-one business consultations totaling more than 50 diverse programs. According to the organization behind the event, it's set to attract around 20,000 visitors from 200 cities in 60 countries. The government says this event will be an opportunity to spread Korea's smart city technology to the world and expects it will be also an opportunity to promote the overseas expansion of related companies. So what is a, quote, smart city, and why is it so important to gather leaders in the field at one place? We have two experts with us in the studio today. First, we have Andrew Lim, Research and Innovation Attaché at the Government of Quebec. Welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
We also have Jonathan Albrecht, the COO of ISIS. Welcome to you as well.
Welcome for having me tonight.
So I wanted to start with you, Mr. Albrecht. So what is the significance of this World Smart City Expo being here in South Korea? I know you're not based here, so you're also temporarily here. So what's the significance?
There are many, actually. One of the most important for South Korea is obviously to provide an opportunity for the country to showcase its technological prowess that they did over the years. There is also like the promotion of sustainable urban development, along with fostering international collaboration like we have right now with Quebec, Canada, and Korea. And also, it can have a significant positive effects on the economy, innovation ecosystem, and also urban planning strategies here in Korea.
That's right. And now, Mr. Lim, how does a city, so I want to talk about the definition of smart city as a whole. How does a city transition from being a conventional city to a smart one? Or does it have to be built from the bottom up? And how long does it take for a city to become smart?
Well, that's a very comprehensive question. So first, I would like to define smart cities. I mean, people have heard of this term for a long time. It started with ubiquitous city, now it's smart cities. So people wonder, what is smart cities? So basically, the basic definition is using data, using technology to serve urban problems. I mean, cities have a lot of problems, waste management, traffic, they have problems with labor shortage, etc. So smart city is to use technology, IoT sensors, data, AI, etc., to kind of take that data and solve these problems with tech. But the transition now is, rather than having the tech be at the forefront, they want to kind of put human behavior, or quote unquote, they call it human-centric smart cities now. So what they want to do is, instead of just having the tech out there to try to solve, first we have to really see human behavior. How is this actually impacting their lives, their neighborhoods, their environment, etc.? So that's kind of what the definition of a smart city is, but they're transitioning from, rather than a tech-driven, to more like bottom-up driven. So some of the key transformations that people are seeing these days is, of course, everybody knows AI. I mean, smart cities have been there, automated vehicles, 5G, all that, but with ChatGPT and all the new technologies from AI, I think that's really transforming smart cities. What I mean by that is, like ChatGPT, the algorithm to learn about data and have it transform and actually have generative data and have actual results from that. I think that is a big transition. So, for example, smart cities, you get a lot of data from, for example, IoT sensors. And back then, with that data, they would look at it and they would try to see what the problem is and kind of solve it out themselves. But nowadays, with AI, they could put the actual data inside, and like ChatGPT, they would actually spit it out. Of course, it takes a lot of data, lots of training, machine learning, all that. But with algorithmic technologies like ChatGPT, they could actually utilize AI and have like CCTVs for traffic management, things like that. So like AI, you could type like ChatGPT, how can I reduce traffic at this certain time, at this certain moment, or how can I reduce carbon emissions? So with training, AI would tell you, like ChatGPT, you have to, change the traffic signal from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, this kind of transformation. And I'm really, really looking forward to this transformation, actually.
Right, and I wanted to ask you, he's already touched on it because your company has a lot to do with IoTs. So let me ask you, what are some essential technology? I know Andrew has already touched upon it, but if you go down to the real details, what are some core technologies that a smart city must acquire in your view?
Well, I can think of three right now that are extremely important. And one is connectivity and connection and communication infrastructures, because we need, well, not we need, but the country, for example, or any country, they need to have a solid and reliable network to gather any data, do real-time monitoring, and be able to having some good communication between devices and systems. And also, for example, with our company, we're in the IoT industry, sensors. It's extremely important to collect and gather those crucial data for many applications, like, for example, environmental monitoring and weather prediction, traffic management, waste management, and also energy efficiency. And finally, we have been talking a lot recently about smart mobility, and using AI solutions to analyze all sorts of data can help reduce congestion, can improve transportation efficiency also, and promote at most the sustainable mobility options.
And so you were talking about all these different technologies. I know your expertise is in hardware as well. So what's the typical time frame for all these things to be implemented in a city, you say?
Well, there's no real answer for that, obviously, because it depends on the complexity of the project. But regarding a city, for those kind of projects inside a smart city, it can depend on the size of the city, its budget, also if there is any political support, for example. But also one thing that has to be in consideration is technology changes rapidly. So cities have to take that into consideration and accelerate their decision-making process just to make sure that they can use the technology at the right time for the right purpose.
Right. Now, Andrew, you've been in Korea for quite some time, so you've been to different cities. And we're talking about all these different things that make a smart city. Which cities do you think within the country really reflects the definition of a smart city so far?
Well, I don't want to sound biased, but I do live in Seoul, and Seoul is the capital city, and obviously with their population and budget size, I would say Seoul metropolitan government does have one of the best smart cities technologies in Korea, but actually I think the world. One of the key issues, it's kind of the past, but still, the untact movement, coronavirus, all that stuff. So they just somewhat recently launched the Metaverse Seoul. You probably heard of this. It's basically providing essential public services online. Yes, we had some of that before. You probably know there's some kiosks around the subway station where you could get document registration, et cetera, But this metaverse really helps the vulnerable. Maybe you need some birth certificate, but you cannot leave the home for whatever reasons, like maybe for health reasons. You could log in, actually create an avatar, authenticate yourself, and get this birth certificate by PDF, for example. So this kind of cool technology I think Seoul makes it really advanced. But some of the key ones that I'm really following these days is, I'm sure you know, Korea and other countries, advanced countries around the world, they have their birth rate issues. But also, more importantly, there's a lot of elderly population. So Seoul, and I guess Korea and other countries around the world, like Canada and Quebec as well, we also have a large elderly population. So they coined this term silver care. So they have a lot of smart city technologies to help the elderly. So it could be, for example, having IoT sensors in their power plug to show how their electricity consumption is normally. But let's say they're using very little electricity. Then perhaps there's some reasons for that, health reasons, maybe fainted, had a heart attack. So then the IoT sensor would alert the proper authorities, like the district office. So they would give them a call. If there's no answer, maybe they would have a policeman actually knock on the door and maybe save some lives. That's one really cool technology. But what I really think is what was really cool is, like I said, tech is cool, but you need that human-centric, component to it. So, yes, IoT is all good, but quite often there's this, what we call the digital divide. Smart cities, apps, IoT sensors, all that. But I'm sure we know the elderly, they're not as familiar with these technology. So there's a lot of work being done in this area. For example, the Seoul Metropolitan Government works with agencies like the Seoul Digital Foundation, where they actually have capacity building programs for the elderly. But what's interesting is, yeah, I've heard of elderly training, but they're very in tune to what the elderlies need. So they actually use other elderly people to train the elderly. Because let's say, for example, you have some young people train the elderly. And I'm sure within the Confucius society and all those cultural reasons, maybe they're a bit shy. Maybe they think, oh, this young person is kind of looking down on me because I don't know tech. But if you have a fellow senior citizen teaching a fellow senior citizen, you kind of mitigate these impacts. And this is what I mean by tech is very important, but you need that human-centric aspect. And this is what I mean by this transition.
Right. And sometimes you don't know where we can apply the tech, and once after we develop it, right? And
Exactly.
then we find the use for it. Mm-hmm. So now, building on from that, how credible is South Korea in terms of building a smart city? I ask because the government wants to utilize this World Smart City Expo as a stage for diplomacy, more exchanges from Korean cities to the rest of the world. So how credible is it? I know you're from the government of Quebec, so maybe you're the perfect person to ask. How credible do you think the government is?
So that's a great question. I mean, smart cities, the government, diplomacy, these things are very important. So in terms of the actual event, the World Smart Cities Expo, it's of course run by the government, MOLIT, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, Ministry of Science, etc. And they understand smart cities. It has a lot of components that may be difficult for international collaboration or for credibility. Because smart cities, you have to always, kind of hype it up to get people on board, et cetera. So there's a lot of questions about these kind of legitimacy. And for Korea, how they've kind of started to use smart cities as part of their diplomatic kind of leverages, they use it a lot for ODA. I'm sure you probably heard official development assistance. So there's many examples of this working with KOICA and other government agencies. For example, one of the recent successes is T-Money. I'm sure you know the T-Money card you use on your subway or even convenience stores. It actually works in some of the other countries like Colombia now. As part of the ODA program, they did this a couple of years back. So they helped Colombian citizens not use always, like coins and paper anymore. Now you could actually, I heard you could actually take the T-Money card here and use it there. Of course, you have to charge in their own currency, but things like that. So Korea has been trying to legitimize through a lot of their ODA programs, because that's an obvious reason, because you would help their social challenges. However, there are smart cities. There's not always successful cases. For example, Songdo can be seen as a success, but also a lot of people see it as a failure case where they built it, but people didn't really come because they had bigger expectations for Songdo, but it's still somewhat empty. The public transportation isn't there, et cetera, et cetera. So there is some legitimacy problems. But I think Korea is still trying to really leverage their smart cities, their tech, their know-how. Korea is kind of having the spotlight. So that's why they have a lot of these events. And as Jonathan mentioned, a lot of countries are coming. We're also involved as well. I'll be speaking at the 7th Local Smart Cities Council, where there's a lot of local governments that'll come, and I'll talk to them about Quebec Smart Cities prowesses, but also talk about how we could actually collaborate. Government funding, data sharing, although that can be quite sensitive. For example, maybe Korea's a bit better at hardware, but maybe Canada, Quebec's a better at software. So we kind of put that together. So that is kind of part of my job, and that is why we're being involved in this event.
Right, and it's important to bridge the companies together through this stage. Right, right. Now, Jonathan, so South Korean government has been actively removing so-called killer regulations that kind of stymie the development of certain companies, and I'm sure you have firsthand experience as a COO of a hardware company. So, can you give us some examples where regulation has hindered technological advancements in terms of developing a city?
Well, the best example that I have right now in mind is about startups and small businesses. I can see how easy now it can be to have a company running in South Korea. They reduced a lot of the bureaucratic hurdles, and so that helps a lot. Also in terms of registration process, taxation, they also allow us to have access to some fundings, which interestingly enough promotes entrepreneurship and the economic diversification as well. So that's quite interesting and extremely interesting for us. Also, because South Korea is in what I say a technological boom, it has becoming a really important tech hub for startups, for tech startups. And so this is also obviously one of the reasons for a Quebec company like ours, specialized in electronics and in IoT precisely, to come to Korea to benefit from this extremely interesting market for us. But also in terms of telecommunication regulations, for example, it has also been modified recently, all those regulations, in order to roll out this 5G network and to benefit even more about being able to telecommunicate more, to have better real-time monitoring, basically to have better access of information, which is very, very important. And also for the financial sector, there has been in place a regulatory sandbox, which has helped to develop a better digital banking system, like for example the T-Money card, as he was mentioning earlier, which encourage also competition and innovation. And that I found that it's quite interesting that South Korea is moving forward in terms of removing those so-called killer regulations and to make it more easily for their citizens to have a better life.
Right, right. And you talk about the sandbox, right? So there are some examples that innovative regulatory approaches, implemented in new cities will boost the companies. You've already touched on it, but could you maybe reiterate the importance and give us more examples?
Sure. Yeah. It's no secret that in more cities right now are into developing autonomous vehicles, and that's the case, for example, in a city in Chandler, Arizona, the United States. They have given more access to Uber, for example, to create some kind of autonomous an autonomous vehicle to allow passengers to freely enjoy their rides. So that's one example. Another example is I will take in Quebec, Montreal City. It has become what I call an AI city. They have given many opportunities to big companies such as Microsoft and Facebook to open their lab, giving them access to funds to allow them to create like such hub in Montreal, which is absolutely amazing. And also here, more in Korean cities, and I will take Seoul as example, they have created POC programs, proof of concept. Thank you. So they have created proof of concept program within their districts, and we're part of some of those programs that we're benefiting, which is absolutely amazing. And also, finally, another point that I found really interesting is since the pandemic, it gave so much opportunities for people to work remotely that some cities like Barcelona, Bangkok, for example, they have developed a digital nomad visa, which allow them, their country, to benefit from for different reasons, and the economic reason is one of them, because they can diversify through the help of many people coming from many countries. So that's what I found really interesting about those.
Right. And you've been across the world and you've seen certain examples. Now, I wanted to talk about the future with both of you guys. Andrew, start with you. What is the future direction of smart cities, and what advancements or features do you foresee in the next generation? Some things that we can't expect yet as normal citizens. Maybe an expert, can give us a little hint
Sure.
on what to expect.
So, I mean, future, who knows? But from my point of view, you've probably heard this a lot, data is the new oil. So yes, I mentioned AI as well. There's a lot of data to be had from smart cities, IoT sensors, CCTV, all that. But one could also see it could be limiting. If you talk about like ChatGPT, that scoured the entire internet for several years to actually obtain that data. That's why it's actually able to generate the text and that kind of transformative information. So in terms of smart cities, I think data will be the new oil, like that'll be a key part of the AI. But why I mentioned data is because if you think about smart cities, yes, lots of data, but maybe it's not enough. So a new emerging tech is coming where we call it synthetic data. So we use AI to create synthetic data to feed the AI, like another type of algorithm to do the machine learning, to be able to have enough information to actually be useful. So I think synthetic data is a new trend that's actually coming out. Another big one is actually quantum technology. Probably people have heard of quantum tech, but they're like, what is that?
Well, I mean, we have OpenAI,
yes,
right?
Yes,
so
that's true.
A lot of people have heard
Yes.
quantum, but yes, yeah.
So quantum tech, I mean, I'm not going to go through it in too much detail, but basically it is very advanced computing tech, for example. It could do calculations that a conventional computer might take years, thousands of years. So for obvious reasons, it's very sensitive. So in terms of, because of diplomacy, geopolitics, all that stuff, quantum is a new field that is actually emerging, but it's a very important field that the Canadian government, Quebec, but also Korea has announced. President Yoon announced their quantum strategy quite recently. Hence, we actually have a quantum delegation from Canada coming in November and one from Quebec coming next year, February. So why are they coming? It's very simple. Advanced, like-minded countries, due to the geopolitical ramifications these days, we have to work together, especially in sectors like quantum computing, because we need a lot of data, we need a lot of expertise, because quantum technology has been around, well, you probably heard here and there, but it's still in its nascent stages. So like-minded countries, but especially governments, need to continue to fund, continue to innovate so that it actually booms and changes the world. So just to make a last point. So for Quebec, what they did was they created something called innovation zones. So I think there's a little bit of a trend in other countries in smart cities. They create a zone actually to kind of agglomerate some of the tech companies, research centers all together. So in, for example, quantum tech in Quebec, there's an area called Sherbrooke. There's a university there. They're putting startups, they're putting supercomputing, all that, to put all the quantum players there so that they kind of work together and actually, bring about hopefully some commercial successes later in the year.
Right. And Jonathan, would you like to add something so that normal citizens don't really know, but what we can expect from a smart city? Where we're living?
Obviously, it's improving the life of people. So, and being an avid fan of technology, obviously, I jump into any occasion to improve my situation. And so, obviously, like Andrew mentioned, we have to rely a lot on data. Data is extremely important, and over the years, every kind of data that we were able to collect, then it's helping us a lot right now to create ChatGPT, to have access to all the possible knowledge in the world in the palm of your hand. And so that's what I think it's amazing, and I'm sure it's going to continue improving in that sense.
And we don't know what's going to be coming.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, I can speak to you for hours about this, but that's all the time we have for today's edition. Mr. Lim and Mr. Albrecht, thank you for joining us this evening, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Now that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.